All right, on today's episode, Brendan's going to say a lot of really cool stuff about what we talked about. Well, we did talk to Jake Hatch from DJ and PK and his Locked On Cougars. He is a convert to soccer, and we learn all about his newfound. Well, it's not new, but his how he fell in love with a beautiful game. And what else we can talk about, Brendan?
Locked on Cougars is not about 40-year-old or 50-year-old women that are very attractive. It is about a very terrible team that is clear down in Provo. But the real thing is, we're going to talk about Real Salt Lake and his takes. And this guy can talk, man. He is good at what he does.
And he did admit that Locked On Cougars is MILF-tastic.
How do you think of this stupid stuff, dude? Oh, man.
I have a mind built for horrible comedy.
Man.
So yeah, so join us on this episode. It was a lot of fun talking to Jake. All right, it's another episode of the RSL Random Fan Podcast. I'm a host, Brandt Goebel, joined by Brennan. We have a very special guest, Jake Hatch. He's the guy that you get up and listen to for DJ and PK in the morning. We know you don't listen to nobody wants to listen to PK. We want to hear from Yak, as I think that's your nickname, right?
Yes, it is.
So thank you for joining us. But we do want to find out, is PK really? No, just kidding. Who's nicer, DJ or PK? I guess we already know the answer to that question, but
You should at this point. Let's just put it that way.
So, Jake, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Good to be here.
And you have a role. We want to get to that too, but you are pre and post game with RSL. Maybe that's where people hear you as well. And you also have a podcast with 47 million listeners, I think you said, for Locked On Cougar, something like that. It's massive, right?
Wow, that's incredible, man. That's an imaginary number for an
if I had
imaginary team.
Yeah, if I had 47 million followers, let's just put it this way, I wouldn't be doing radio anymore. But nonetheless, I do a BYU podcast every day. But I work for the KSL Sports Zone, doing pre-half and post-game for RSL. Been lucky enough to do that for the past 3 seasons. And quite frankly, it's a dream come true. It's a club I've really grown to love. And I'm lucky enough that when KSL got the broadcast rights to RSL, Nate Dowdle, who's our sports director over at KSL Sports, said, "Hey, are you interested in being part of this?" And I'm like, yeah. And it's been absolutely a pleasure to work with Spencer Warren and Lauren Beck. I remember listening to them for a long time because I listened to a lot of pre and post game just with the other RSL broadcasts over the years. And I'm lucky. It really is a joy to talk about RSL, even amidst the season like we're having right now.
Yeah, it's been interesting, but we do. I'm always interested to find out how the journey, how you ended up in sports radio, because you're a huge sports fan, and we can really want to talk about being a fellow convert to the beautiful game. But how did you always want to be in sports radio? Was that the dream, or?
The dream was I was a massive sports fan growing up, and I wanted to be in sports at some level. Now, it didn't matter to me which way I got in. I just wanted to be in sports. I had a dream growing up that I was going to be a tight end for the San Francisco 49ers, but come to find out being 6 foot, 200 pounds in high school, that ended that dream pretty quick. So, my original plan going into college was maybe to go to the sports administration route, maybe go to law school and do that. But then, as a student at BYU, and one ill-fated summer afternoon when Twitter was like brand new, we're going back to the like 2010s. So throwing it way back, Greg Wrubell, who's the play-by-play voice for BYU, said, "Hey, I'm looking for an intern for this upcoming football season." Now, I didn't have any sports broadcasting background, but to my dad's chagrin, because he's never let me live it down, he said, "Hey, apply." Well, it's the worst they can say is no. And I said, "Great, I applied." Greg Wrubell calls me a week later, says, "I'd like to interview for the job." I said, "Okay, cool." Sat me down, and I don't know what I said. And but 3 days later, he offered me the internship. I spent a football season working with him, and then spent the Jimmer Fredette, his senior season, working with Greg as an intern, watching Jimmer do what he did as a senior for the BYU basketball program, and realized, you know what? This is a pretty sweet thing to be in sports radio and be able to talk about sports, and follow that up a year later with an internship working for David Locke in the Utah Jazz. And not to belabor the point, but the year after that, so I did two internships over 2 years with BYU and the Utah Jazz. And then the year after that, I had been interning at 1320 KFan, which is then the Miller family bought 1280 The Zone and made The Zone the play-by-play home of the Utah Jazz. And they had a little signal called 960 AM KOVO, which broadcasts out of Provo. It broadcasts specifically to Utah County. And they wanted to build a BYU specific show, and they needed a producer. Well, Scott Gerard, who was our intrepid program director for many, many years, calls Gregor Bell and David Locke, and both of them said, hey, there's this kid named Jake Hatch. Reach out to him. And that's how I got my start. I produced that show for a couple of years. You now know it as Cougar Sports 960 with Ben Criddle. And I did that for 2 years. And then they, for whatever reason, decided I needed to work with DJ and PK. And that's where I've been for the last 11 years, every single morning producing for them. And that's so long story short, that is my journey into sports media and sports radio. And I've had a blast the entire way through.
Holy cow. You sound like you are on radio, dude. You have the beautiful cadence, my brother. Holy cow, dude. It's like I'm watching TV or something. This is great. I'm going to learn from you.
Well, it comes with the territory, but I'm really lucky to do what I do because I'm the oldest of 7 kids in my family. My brothers all work in other industries. And as they like to say, their coworkers want to talk about me more than they want to talk about my brothers. So it's pretty sweet to have that, I guess, notoriety in a way. But at the same time, I'm a massive, massive sports fan, and it gives me an outlet literally every single day so that I'm not bloviating on and on to my wife, who doesn't give one iota.
Yeah, but here's the big question. Do the ladies love Jake Hatch? We've heard about the guys. The guys love Jake Hatch, but just kidding.
I was lucky enough to find at least one who could tolerate me. We've been married for 10 years. Luckily enough, we got 3 kids, so it's worked out.
No, good. Congratulations. And I feel for you too. I had dreams as well. I wanted to be Adrian Dantley, but there are no 5'11", 5'9", 5'10". Well, I'm getting shorter now. Power forwards in the NBA, sadly, but it is what it is.
Strong elbows, man. Yeah, it's some serious.
Yeah, you gotta have those. I can
out.
church ball with the best of them. So, So you mentioned that you were a convert to soccer. We had a little conversation. We kind of hit it off because I too am a soccer convert. How did that come about?
Okay, this is gonna be funny. I'm going to take you back to the 2008 Champions League final. I had just gotten home from an LDS mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Taiwan. So not a soccer country, because Taiwan is baseball first and foremost. They're all about the hardball. But I was sitting at home. And so this time, it would be what now, almost 20 some odd years ago. And the Champions League final had come on. It was a Saturday afternoon. I remember it just like we just had this past weekend. And I tuned in and I'm like, you know what? This is pretty cool stuff. And I remembered when RSL launched in 2004. I was a junior in high school at that point. I remember all the hoopla about it. And I thought, okay, it's pretty cool to have professional soccer here in Utah. But at that point, I was the hard-headed American football player in high school. And I played golf and basketball. And I'm like, whatever. That's that sport over there. And I watched that Champions League final and saw how fluid it was, because as we all know, the Champions League is the best soccer in the world outside of maybe international national team stuff. And I was like, you know what, this is pretty cool. And then I started looking more into RSL. I had a boss for the job I worked at the time who was a big RSL fan, and he hooked me up with tickets every so often. And that's how I kind of fell in love with it. I realized, you know what, I can represent my hometown, obviously, because I'm a born and raised Utahn and lucky to be from this state. And it's cool to have professional soccer here. I will never say it's the quality of Champions League or the Premier League or any of that. But the nice part is we do have professional soccer right here in our backyard. And I just fell in love with it. And obviously it helped. The RSL made that run in 2009 to the Cup, won that one, made the Cup run in 2013 as well. They had some really incredible teams. Jason Kreis, what he built in that era, it was so beyond what MLS was at the time. It was hard not to fall in love with it. And simply put, I just started watching and realized, you know what, this is pretty cool stuff. And that's what latched me.
Well, I have a question. I was looking at your mic and it says Locked on Cougars. Now, is that women that we're talking about? Like we're searching for like the best looking Cougars in the state. What's Locked on?
You'd be surprised that I get that question more often than you think. So Locked on Cougars, it's actually a BYU daily podcast. Now, we originally named it Locked on BYU, but Brigham Young University is pretty protective of their IP and said, hey, we're going to ask that you change that before we actually send you a formal cease and desist letter. So we rebranded as Locked On Cougars. I've been the host of it. It's a daily BYU centric podcast for almost 7 years now. And it's an outlet for me to talk about another love of mine, speaking of BYU. But the fun part is we've built out a network here where we've got Big 12 shows across the board. So I'm talking all the time about Big 12 topics now with Utah and BYU in the same league again. It's pretty fun. So yeah. So, but that question, Locked On Cougars, like, hey, are we talking? No, I get that question often enough. So don't be surprised, Brennan.
So you're saying it is MILF-tastic, though. Yeah.
There we go. Yes. I should use it as a tagline right there. MILF-tastic. That'd be fun.
That's all yours. It's all yours, Jake. So my other question that flew out of my aging, decrepit old mind was, what about other soccer fandom, other teams? Because what's what I love about soccer is that you can have multiple teams, which is kind of frowned on. I mean, I guess you could have American League and a National League team, but nobody has an AFC or an NFC team in the NFL or multiple NBA teams. But in soccer, you can have almost as many as you want because the leagues are across the world.
Yeah. So I had a roommate in college who was a big Arsenal fan, and he tried to convince me to support the Gunners. And I started watching the Premier League with him, and there was this team in blue that was a pretty ardent rival of Tottenham, that was in the Tottenham Hotspur, that I would watch play out. And Gareth Bale was like this one-man wrecking crew during that era. And I would watch Gareth Bale play, and I'm like, you know what? I like that team a whole lot more than I like the Gunners. So I latched on with Tottenham, and I have been an idiot to have supported that team as long as I have. But they did win silverware this year, everybody. 17 years without anything significant, and Ange delivered on the possibly very last opportunity he had to save his job. Now, it may not save his job in the end. So I'm a big Tottenham fan. I'm all about the Spurs, but then I'm also from German heritage, and I've watched a fair amount of the Bundesliga, and I've kind of latched on with Borussia Dortmund over there in Germany. Those are my two other, I guess, soccer clubs you could say I'm supporting.
That's unfortunate, man. I mean, I had a lot of respect for you leading into this. So, I mean, I'm sorry. So other than, being a fan of an incredibly terrible team in the Premier League, what do you feel is the biggest difference in the MLS side versus something you see over the seas? Like what do you think is captivating about overseas?
Well, the one thing is there's just a fluidity. And now here's the thing about European soccer. They're the biggest, the brightest, the fastest, the most technically skilled athletes in soccer worldwide. That's they have the money, so they can bring those athletes in. The one thing I will always love about MLS is they have got guys who are grinders, guys who are they're playing for the love of the game, because there's a lot of guys in this league to this day that are not going to be super rich from soccer. They will have to go find another job whenever their days of playing footy is over. And I can respect that fact that it's a league that, yeah, there's going to be the Messis who will come overseas. Olivier Giroud playing for LAFC. They will come overseas once their time in Europe they feel like is done and they want to do another thing and play in the United States. But for every one of those guys, I look at it, for example, Diego Luna, that kid, he is absolutely phenomenal. And he is really, remember, he was in the San Jose Earthquakes Academy, and they pretty much dumped him, said, yeah, you don't fit what we're looking for. You're not tall enough. You kind of built like a box. And there was a perception out there, if you listen to him, that people thought he was out of shape just because of the way his body is shaped. Well, the thing about it is, what does he become? He's become the talisman that RSL has relied upon this season. And quite frankly, I don't know if they're going to sell him this summer or not, but I would hope they don't. And he gets to continue to play a starring role, because all it's led to is him being one of the premier U.S. men's national team darlings under Poach. And I hope that he continues to do that. And I know that he has aspirations of playing overseas, but he's still only 21 years old, everybody. Like, he is still so young that he's got a long time to go over and play in Europe. I think his best bet from my vantage point to play in the World Cup is to stay here in Salt Lake for another year through the 2026 World Cup, play a big outsized role for RSL, and continue to show Mauricio Pochettino and the U.S. men's national team that he is a really, really good player, and he deserves to be called up for the World Cup, even though he plays in Major League Soccer.
Well said, man.
Yeah. Are you listening, Diego? Are you listening? No.
We'll see.
Diogo.
Diogo's another story. That's about
Well, we talked about your other teams, and my wife is a Tottenham fan, so I can't hold that against you. My Premier League team hasn't made it there yet, but they've only got the League One again, the championship to go before they make it to the
Who is it?
Crawley Town.
Crawley Town. Okay, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yep, everybody's heard of Crawley Town. I mean, they're the most famous Red Devils there are.
Absolutely, man.
So, but let's just jump in and let's talk about Real Salt Lake and find your thoughts. Were you surprised with how this season went, or was the writing on the wall the whole time?
The way it's went. Now they're halfway through the season now because we reached 17 matches against LA Galaxy. I would honestly say it's not been what I expected, but I did have concerns coming into the year because when you sell off the type of guys that they sold off, Chicho and all the guys, essentially 60% of their goal scoring was gone from last year's roster. And to replace it, and it's nothing against Ari Peel, it's nothing against Forster or Jago, the two guys they had at the start of the season at striker, and I've brought in William Agata, obviously, there. But there was not like for like replacements. Now, in retrospect, they were trying to sell the club, and that I think tied up a lot of the finances and what they possibly could have done in that winter window. Even though I would have liked to have seen them push a little more for that, whether it was the Blitzer Group or Ryan Smith or the Millers, whoever could have made that happen, where they could have invested a little more heavily. But the season to this point is their record says that they are a below playoff line team, and that's very clear because they're below the playoff line. But the other thing I look at is they have been in a lot of these matches of late. Now, the LA Galaxy one aside, because that was a debacle. But you look at the Austin game. They should have beaten Austin. They should have scored multiple goals in that match, and giving up a late goal and it ties 1-1. That's just that doesn't sit right. I know it doesn't sit right in the locker room. It doesn't sit right with RSL fans, the coaches, administrators, whoever it might be. They haven't played that badly. The sad part is they have not been able to capitalize on the opportunities that they are generating. And until they start to capitalize on those, we're going to see more of what we're seeing right now where, yeah, they have the 4 wins versus 10 losses with 3 draws.
Yeah, they lost 42 goals from last year. Chicho, Gomez, Crooks, and Julio.
Yeah.
And I wasn't too concerned of. Maybe you can share. You probably know every last detail on what happened with Chicho, and you probably want to share with us tonight how Chicho got sent away. But we know it wasn't good, and it sucked that you had a guy that was halfway through the season last year was 17 goals, and then I think he got one or didn't. I don't know if he got one through the end of when he came back from suspension.
Yeah. He went over after that suspension the rest of the way.
I think he got a couple at his sister too. That's what. But other than that, yeah, it was awful. So and then Manuel.
Yeah.
And that's been this big discussion from RSL fans. Is it the front office? Is it who is going to get the blame? And is there any blame to throw around? How does this all break down? What are your thoughts?
To me, I have a hard time blaming the coaching staff first because Pablo's been doing what he can with what he's been given. So the whole hashtag Pablo out stuff, don't start with that with me. I think Pablo is a very, very capable manager. He's doing the best with what he's got. Because like I said, they have generated looks. Look, for example, look at Xavier Gozo. 3 minutes in against LA Galaxy, he buries that goal. Completely different look of that match, in my opinion. Got to bury those chances. And you could go back to the last 10 matches, the 10 losses, I would say, for RSL, and find moments in every one of those matches, by and large, that RSL would have liked to have buried. And Pablo says it often, goals change games. Now, where the blame lies, I think the Manuel situation, I think that he was a guy intent on forcing a power play, whether it was to get more money out of RSL, because he tried to essentially insinuate that, well, when I'm transferred overseas, the contract gets ripped up and it gets a new one. You know what? That's the way it works in a Major League Soccer. And if your agent's pulling that with you, guess what? Maybe it was for the best that he moved along. But in retrospect, when you were expecting Manuel to come in and kind of be the point man, you would send Anderson in that trade, which got Sam Junqua in return. And Sam's been very, very good, I think, for the squad on the back line.
Well, he'd be great for BYU too.
would be. But you needed talent up front. And Anderson Julio, he may not be the out and out striker the RSL needs, but he would have been an upgrade over what they have had so far this year. And that's the tough part in retrospect, that you sent him to FC Dallas because you thought, hey, Manuel's coming in. He'll kind of shoulder the load here. We'll bring R.A. Peel and Forster Ajago along as kind of the replacements for a guy like Anderson Julio. But I look at it as, yeah, there is blame, I think, more on the management side, but I think it goes more to the fact that the ownership was in flux. They were trying to get a deal across the line to have the Millers buy the majority stake. Now, Ryan Smith had a first right of refusal to buy that majority stake from David Blitzer's organization, and he passed on it. So the Millers came into it. I think that kind of really circumvented a lot of chances for RSL to get deals across the line in the winter window. And now it makes this summer window that much more important. I know that they can't have guys debut until July 24th, which is a long ways from now, but they can start negotiating. And I hope that they have something announced. Like, remember when Chicho, when he joined RSL, he'd been with the club for multiple weeks before he finally debuted for RSL. And that's got to be what the Millers and the front office do now, is where they go out and whether it's a striker, a really high fly-in winger, whatever they decide to add, get them here weeks ahead of when they can actually debut, so they hit the ground running when they finally are eligible to take the field. Hopefully that made sense.
Well, you brought up the Millers, and you brought up the negotiations. Maybe you know a little bit more. From what I'm hearing, maybe the negotiations were a lot longer and more extended, and had a larger impact than maybe fans that aren't in the know as much as you, or at least around people that are in the know as you. So is that kind of what happens? Like, there's just too much going on to make a big decision?
The negotiations were protracted. Now, I didn't know this at the time. I will say that right up front. I did not know that they were negotiating a sale to the Millers until a lot of people found out about it with those reports that came out from Bogert, et cetera, that RSL and Front Office Sports and others that said that RSL was being sold to the Millers for a majority stake. But the more I've learned about it in retrospect, yeah, it was a protracted negotiation. Whether that was on purpose, I don't know, but it took months to get the deal across the line. And that, I think the fact that it took as long as it did really slowed down what the front office was trying to do in terms of trying to get guys in that winter window to come in and bolster this lineup. I'm sure they took name after name to, at the time, it was the Blitzer group who had the majority stake, and said, hey, we're looking at X, Y, and Z players. And this is just me hypothetical, but and the Blitzer group said, maybe Z of those three, even though they're saying, hey, we need all three of these guys. I can just kind of see that playing out because, once again, they're in negotiations to sell the club, and they may not be as fully intent on investing big money before a big sell of a franchise. So it's unfortunate, but the more I've learned about it in retrospect is it was a protracted negotiation that took months. And I think that really slowed down a lot of player acquisition and the like.
With the since the Millers are taking over now, do you feel that they are going to be making a big move, a big splash in the summer window? Like, because historically, in my perspective, I've never seen the Millers really, take that highlighter type of player.
That is the $1 million question, Brennan. As okay, how big of a splash do they want to make right now? Now, obviously, they had a great run with the Utah Jazz, consistently a playoff team for better part of 2 decades. Trust me, I grew up with the Jazz playoffs. That was a thing like that. They made the playoffs. So they always had consistently competitive squads, but you're right. There has been some thought that they never really went all in to chase a championship. They came so close in 97 and 98 when Michael Jordan was in the way, and that happens in sports. But I think that the Millers, the fact that they bought back into sports ownership when they had divested themselves of it, indicates to me that they are intent on making an imprint in the local community. And I think that they will, as they learn about this sport, because the NBA is pretty regulated. Like you trade guys within the league itself. It's North American based. Well, guess what? Soccer, it's worldwide, everybody. Transfer market is a whole other deal. I think they will come in, and I think they're smart enough to keep people that have been around this club, whether it's a Kurt Schmid, Jason Kreis, the brain trust that's really been in soccer. They're going to come in. I think they're smart enough to know what they don't know, and that is navigating what can be a pretty interesting world when it comes to transfer market in world football. So I would imagine that they will try and make an imprint at some level. The question is, how big of a splash are they willing to go for? Are they going to splash $20 million down on a striker? That'd be awesome, but I don't know what to expect quite yet.
But it also can kind of depend on their tenure, right? I mean, how long are they actually going to be owners? Are they planning on this being a long haul, or is this just like a little showpiece?
Okay, now that's a great question. They have made it very clear they want to bring Major League Baseball to this market, bring it to Salt Lake. They want to be the principal owners of that Major League Baseball franchise. I don't know this for certain. This is me speculating. So once again, this is not me reporting. I think this is me talking about it. I think they brought back into Major League Soccer to show Major League Baseball that they are capable of continuing to be synonymous with excellence and running things very stable, like in professional sports. And I think that could go a long way, obviously, to helping them show Major League Baseball what they're capable of. And I think the Millers, they've been very strong stewards. Going back to when Larry and Gail bought the Jazz, they looked at it as a community asset. And I think they understand what RSL is. Yeah, is it ever going to be on the same level as the Utah Jazz? Probably not. But it is fit an absolute niche in this community. It's beloved. There's 20,000 people in that stadium more often than not who love what RSL is. And they understand that there is something they can do with this. And I think they're in it for the long haul, quite honestly, because I think that they want to show Major League Baseball that they are very capable of still working in the Major League Sports universe. And it's a showpiece for them to show Major League Baseball that, yeah, we are back into sports and we're here for the long haul.
Speaking of the Millers, when it first came out, I don't know that I was overly excited for the Millers because if you know the history, if you paid attention, the reason that RSL doesn't have a downtown stadium and we're out in stadium is because of the efforts of Larry Miller, right? He worked nonstop. I know people that were involved in the legislature and lobbyists that were involved when Dave Chekas was trying to get a stadium built, and they passed a law saying they can't use RDA money for soccer stadiums, and then the next year that law went away. So there was a huge effort on the Millers, and I don't know if that translates to his wife, but Larry didn't seem to want to let Dave Checketts be successful. So if you're a little bit closer to them, any thoughts on the heartburn? Because I'm glad we have an owner with that wants to be committed, but I am still really skeptical.
Well, I think that skepticism is valid. Let me be very clear about that. But the interesting part is, if I'm not mistaken, Dave Checketts is now on the LHM, the Miller Family Organization Board of Directors. So whatever bad blood maybe between Larry and Dave at the time, appears to have been patched up. Now, that's just me looking at it from an outside, because if he were that out with the Miller family, would you think he's sitting on that board today? I wouldn't think so. So
no, I didn't know that. So that makes me feel a little bit better. So thank you, Jake.
I think that's changed a little bit, but yeah, it may have been just a Larry Miller versus Dave Checketts thing. So Dave worked for Larry. He was obviously the team president for the Utah Jazz before heading out to the New York Knicks. And I know that Larry was a guy who valued loyalty very, very highly. And when guys left the organization, speaking of the Jazz, I think it caused some friction there. So yeah, I think that heartburn, whether maybe it died with Larry, I don't know, but I think the fact that Dave is working with the Millers now indicates to me that whatever rift there was has been patched up to at least some level, and they're apparently on terms enough to work together.
Well, that's good because if I remember right too, it was like Dave kind of wanted a little bit more out of Larry, wanted to be some ownership and stuff, and so I'm glad that sounds like it's all worked out, and I agree with Brennan. We want to make sure that they're committed to this, and it isn't just something that they're doing for a minute. Kind of like Ryan Smith seemed like as soon as hockey came around, it was just like, oh yeah, I have a soccer team. But appreciative for them to at least play a role and help RSL stay because the Deloy situation and not having an owner, we're much better positioned than we were before.
Yeah, let's just put it this way. I'll send the Ryan Smith side of things. It was critical for him to be a part of what David Blitzer was doing when he bought RSL to keep it here in Utah. Now, I don't think it was necessarily in danger of leaving like overnight, but not having a local owner involved in understanding what the Utah market was, that would have hurt because Blitzer could come in and try and do things, but have somebody boots on the ground, to use that expression, with Ryan Smith and his organization, I think it helped navigate what was a really, really tough deal because the Deloitte situation, it was bad. Just bad all the way around. So it's good to have a guy like Ryan Smith to bought in when he did. I don't know why he wouldn't have bought the majority stake, but yeah, you mentioned the Utah Mammoth, the hockey club. Maybe he decided that's where his interest lied more. Maybe so. But the nice part is the Millers are now in a very stable position. They are Utah through and through, and it sure looks like that they are intent on keeping this club here for the long term and being a part of it long term as well.
So let's get back to RSL a little more specific. Let's talk about Pablo Mastroeni. You said you like him, but I wanted to get back to the Xavier Gozo question because we've talked a lot about it. There seems like you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get some minutes under Pablo Mastroeni. New signings, young players, whether they're homegrown or just somebody that they brought in. It seems like they're I don't know what the steps are, but it feels like there are a lot of steps. The universe has to jump in and has a say on it before someone can get some minutes. And Xavier Gozo, if Mark Chuk doesn't get hurt, maybe Xavier Gozo is still sitting on the bench.
That's very well could be the case. I think the one thing that Pablo likes is guys who are willing to work because he was a true number 6. He was a grinder when he was out there playing with U.S. men's national team in the Rapids, and he was the least favorite player of many RSL fans in those early days, and for good reason because he was the Kyle Beckerman for the Rapids, and he did the dirty work, and I think he appreciates that Xavier he's willing to put in that work because you watch him. Gozo, he will drop back 80 yards to defend when he doesn't have to. He's playing that number 10 spot and he's dropping back looking to help out on defense. His work rate is incredible. I think those are all qualities that Pablo values very, very highly. And I think he sees something in what Gozo offers as a young player that he's like, you know what? This kid deserves it. And the nice part is, all Gozo has done is really show that he is worth every bit of investment they have put into him in terms of minutes, the training and everything. And it's awesome to see because he barely graduated high school. I interviewed him the week he graduated from high school. How does it feel? He's like, it's pretty cool to finally be done with high school, but he's already playing top shelf soccer as an 18-year-old. His future is extremely bright, and the best part is he is a true homegrown Eagle Mountain, Utah. So where I'm based in Saratoga Springs. I had a conversation with him. His house, if I hit all the lights right, I'm at his house in 5 minutes. He is a Utah kid through and through, has come up through the academy, and he's made good on the bet on himself, and it's an incredible story.
Yeah, he is really, really impressive. So, one last question about Pablo before we move on. But do you feel like he has the tactical acumen to really? He's great when it comes to motivation. It seems like rah rah. But the one knock that people say, looking from the outside in, maybe it's not true. But is he able to tactically move the team forward, especially when they only have 4 wins this year?
Well, that is a great question. Now, I will not say that I am a soccer tactics genius. In fact, I am quite far from it. But I understand the criticism there. But I think Pablo's got a really good sense for what he envisions for a soccer team he thinks will have success in Major League Soccer because he's a guy who played here. He's played in World Cups. He understands the different levels of soccer that are out there. And I think he's smart enough to adapt his lineups to put players in positions to succeed. Quite honestly, a lot of people have said that Diego Luna needs to play the number 10 spot for RSL. The more I watch him at the number 10 versus playing on the left wing, he's much more effective coming in off that left wing. And I think that was a tactical adjustment that he, speaking of Pablo and his staff, made, is saying, yeah, he is a very valuable player playing that number 10 spot as a playmaker, but he is that much more dangerous on the left wing. So we're going to leave him out there and let him do his thing. And whether it's Diogo or Gozo playing that number 10 spot, you deal with it because the playmaking and the overall attacking prowess that comes with a guy like Diego on the wing, I think it screams to what Pablo is trying to build here. Now, does he need to get more from his double pivots in the midfield? Yes. Does he need to get more from the back line? Absolutely. But I think that he has proven that he deserves the benefit of the doubt, at least from my perspective.
I would tend to agree. I've been not, I don't know, overly critical, but just had that thought about, where can Pablo take this team? And I think I've been more impressed this year than any other year that Pablo has been around. Watching him kind of keep this team together because looking at the roster, we talked about the fact that we don't have a striker to speak of.
Stop
And
saying that. Stop saying that. We have good strikers. We do. But
do we
the
have good? Yeah, we have strikers in the same way that we have a quality right back.
no, oh, man, I fully disagree with
All right,
this.
let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Well, no, so he brought up a really good thing talking about the double pivots. He's wanting more out of the double pivots. He wants a little bit more out of the back line. And what I feel like it is a tactical thing that is lacking. I don't think it's the work rate because we're seeing this year they have far more running this year than any year but prior. Like every single position is going above and beyond what the standard position requires. I mean, Gozo running 80 yards. I mean, that's not even anywhere else in this league. Um, but those double pivots are really, really good. I mean, you got a Nelly who's incredibly defensive, and now he's starting to move up the middle of the field. You have Ojeda who is kind of dances on the ball. The two things that they lack though is that finishing ability. They can't shoot from outside the box, which Pablo Ruiz kind of had before he got hurt, which was exciting, but it's going to take time before he gets his feet under him. But I feel like there is a lack of attacking tactics because Pablo Mastroeni is a defensive guy. Like his natural ability is all defense and everything else. The attack it's not bad, but it is missing that decisive like this is my shot, this is what we expect. Because when you have tactic like you're sound tactically, there are three or four different things that you can do in any one situation and you're about it. You know what I mean? You have it.
Yeah, well, to your point, Brennan, think of the RSL coaches in their history. Jeff Cassar, a goalkeeper. Mike Pecky, a defender. Pablo Mastroeni, central defense, a six. Look at Jason Kreis, out and out striker. Who's had the best offenses in RSL history more often than not? Now, last year was a really good offensive year, but there was elite talent, obviously, on the attack. But the most offensive minded, and I think the best tactics wise in the attack is Jason Kreis. Because guess what? He played forward. He knows how to attack. So you need to strike a balance, obviously. And that is, yeah, I can understand that. Tactics wise, yeah, the attacking may be missing. And maybe they need to go find another assistant coach who's got more of an offensive mindset. I don't know, but you make a very good point there. And I would agree with you on that point is, yeah, they're not necessarily maybe as sophisticated offensively as they need to be.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's really hard because if you look at Chicho last year, he was actually working far harder than he is right now on San Jose. Like he would have probably had like twice as many goals if we had a better offensive tactical game plan. Because I mean the 4-2-3-1 is offensive for the most part, but you could see that like he was working hard to create something instead of something being created for him.
And that's the thing about this is they need to find a way to overload boxes more. It feels like from my vantage point, and I know they've pushed Alex Catronis on that left side up to try and create a more of a wingback situation where they kind of drop almost into a back three on defense. But there needs to be more. And the other thing about this, their crosses have not been great. There's not been a lot of service into the box, and that is a function of something that they need to obviously figure out whether. Maybe they bring in another high-priced winger who can deliver better quality service in the box, whether it's Catronis or whoever. There needs to be more overload of the box because look at that Austin game, for example. Austin had RSL under it for the last 15, 20 minutes, and all they did was keep overloading that box, overloading, and it finally broke through. How often have we seen that from RSL this year? Not very often.
Hardly ever get
No.
numbers up. It's crazy.
Yeah, we haven't seen that at all. So, thoughts on the rest of the roster? Watching, it's easy to point out who is kind of carrying the team, and there are two players. You've got Diego Luna, who is carrying the load when it comes to scoring. He's already got 8 goals. He had 8 goals last season. And I don't think anybody else has more than 2, maybe not yet. And then Rafa Cabral has just been stand out. I mean, I don't know how worse they could be. They could have 2 wins instead of 4 wins, but I don't think they would have been as close to maybe having an opportunity to win games if it wasn't for Rafa Cabral. And he looks like he could be one of there's he's already one of the two best goalkeepers that RSL's ever had. Which you've got Nick Raimondo and then not a lot else, but
Yeah.
he truly is special.
Well, that's the thing about that is RSL fans, if you've been around for any significant period of time, synonymous with elite goalkeeping, and that's obviously goes to Nicky. And Raimondo was a legend, and good reason why he's in the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame now, because he deserves every bit of it. And I still believe to this day the fact that he never won Goalkeeper of the Year is an injustice that needs to be rectified by naming it the Nick Raimondo Goalkeeper of the Year. But story for another day. But the
Absolutely.
Rafa Cabral, what a find. And trust me, I was out on him. I was like, you're bringing in a guy who's 35, he played for Napoli, he's played obviously in Brazil, but I'm like, he's 35, he's washed up. What's he really going to be? Well, all he's been has been the second coming of the Wall of the Wasatch. And it's been incredible to watch him do what he's done, because he's been put in some very, very vulnerable positions by RSL's back line and those double pivots in central defense. And all he's done is respond more often than not. Yeah, he's let his fair share of goals through, but guess what? He has saved a whole lot more than what I thought he was capable of. And as you mentioned, they can find themselves with 1-2 wins if he hasn't had some of the heroics he's had.
And it says a lot that when Nelly is out, where does the armband go? It goes to Cabral, which I don't know if that's an indictment of the rest of the team, that we don't have veterans on there that are an obvious choice to wear the captain's armband.
Lad's worn it obviously when Emeka's been unavailable, but obviously we had Justin get a concussion against Austin that knocked him out. I very easily could have seen Justin wearing that armband against the Galaxy had he been available. But I think Rafa, he's been a leader in that locker room since he arrived. He's a veteran voice. He's no nonsense. You can tell that he is a guy he knows what he's at RSL to do, and that is to be the best goalkeeper he can be. He understands he's got a kind of new lease on life and playing the sport that he absolutely loves, and he's taken advantage of it. He's the Iron Man. He's played every minute of every match so far. It's a credit to him and his work rate.
So moving forward, we're halfway through the season. RSL is nowhere near where they were just 12 months ago. If you go and look, it is just astounding. A year ago at this time, RSL was in first place with a 3-point lead over LAFC, and they were 2 points off of the Supporter Shield race against Inter Miami. And in 12 short months, they have just that's all ancient history. It's just amazing. And we talked about a lot of the reasons why that is. But where do they go from here, and how do or will they make the playoffs?
Be an expert for us, please. Can you just be?
That's what we got you on here, Jake, to be the shaman.
Bring in a $10 million striker and have him start scoring goals in bunches. How about that? No, I think the biggest thing is they got to find a way to start scoring goals. Quite honestly, if they can find a way to start capitalizing on their chances, because they've generated looks. There is zero doubt that they have generated looks offensively. It's not as many as I'd like, obviously, but if you can get quality players in, whether it's via the transport, whether it's a striker or a winger, number 10, whatever it is, get guys in here, get them ingrained as soon as possible. I know that with the transfer deadline, so many clubs are intent on carrying it right up to the deadline to kind of bleed you for every nickel that they can save in terms of a transfer fee and the like, but get it done. Whether you have to pay maybe a little more on a premium or whatever for a transfer, if you can get the guys in that you think can make a difference, get them here, get them ingrained with the club. And then when July 24th hits, hopefully they hit the ground running and they can help RSL make a playoff push. Now, it's not out of the realm of possibility for RSL to make the playoffs. Let me be very clear about this. We have watched the Seattle Sounders for, it seems like a decade, start extremely slow year after year after year. And then the back half of the season, they turn on the Jets, and all of a sudden they're top 3 or 4 in the conference and they make a run through the playoffs. That could be RSL, but it is going to require a pretty significant investment and an injection of talent. There's no doubt about it.
And just bring up Seattle, and one of the things that I've noticed with Seattle, I haven't done any of the homework to see if it's true or not, but it certainly looks like in the start of the seasons, they tend to play their young players. They throw out some homegrowns a lot more easier, where on RSL, the flip side is like, they got to earn it. They got to earn it. So, but it is true. I mean, Seattle's had been an incredible squad, incredible organization throughout the years. I think they only missed the playoffs once or twice, maybe. Maybe only been once, but it's definitely not enough. But they haven't missed the playoffs enough for me. But yeah, looking at you're absolutely right. They have to score more goals. They have 16 goals. They they're on pace right now. They won't score as many goals as they had last year at this point. They had 36 goals by the end of May last year, and we're on pace for 32 this year. It's just crazy. So, any players that need to step up, or is it all just come down to if they bring in like Bozanic? If he, I think he's out of contract, maybe he makes another appearance. But yeah, where's the hope, or is it or is it this just a season where you write off and say, you know what, play the young kids and enjoy going to soccer games because we're headed for a rebuild.
I don't think you can write it off because, like I said, there's 17 matches to go, so there is still runway for RSL to do some things. Now, does it look kind of dire? Absolutely, because I'm not going to try and make everybody feel like, hey, RSL, they're this close, but I don't think you can write it off quite yet. Now, they go 4 or 5 more matches after the international break, and they're still just scuttling along. Okay, maybe at that point you kind of feel like you're going to pull the plug, but you need every player to continue to buy in. That's the one thing about this is when clubs go in a bad way, it's very easy for players to start to feel like they got to pull more than what they should and kind of do their own thing. And that's the part that I think Pablo, he's very good at keeping guys engaged, and he's going to have to do his best work now to keep all these guys on the same page. And yeah, you're going to lose Markchuk. You're going to lose Diego for the month of June. And I know there's only 2 matches this month due to the international break, but you're losing those guys for a significant portion of this month. And while they're away, you hope that obviously they play well, but at the same time, gives opportunities for other players to step up in their stead. And hope those guys take advantage of it. As little the amount of matches are pretty small because they play the 14th and the 28th. The LAFC game got moved because they advanced in the FIFA Club World Cup. But you got to find guys who are willing to put in the work. Gozo's one of them. There's no doubt you don't have to worry about that kid's work rate. But whether it's somebody at right back that you haven't tried yet, see if somebody can challenge Caliscan for time. Maybe Bodie Hidalgo finally pulls his head out of what it feels like, because it just feels like he's been kind of mired in a slump. And Brennan, Brennan, what were you going to say?
Dude, I'm agreeing with you. I have no idea why everyone is okay with Bodie Hidalgo's play. Like,
it's not up to par. There's no doubt about it. And he has proven to be a much better player in past seasons than he has been this year. So I just feel like you need to have guys who may not be playing to the standard that we expect from them as fans, and obviously the coaching staff expects, step up here. You got to have guys buy in, as hard as that can be, because some of them may feel like that season is lost, but that now goes down to Pablo and his staff requiring buy-in from these guys. And it can be hard to demand, but they've absolutely got to get it from these guys if they want to have any hope of turning it around.
And one player we've just kind of haven't talked about, we've forgotten about him. I like to tell people that I don't know if you know this, Jake, but Diogo Gonçalves is a designated player. And the reason I say that is because he isn't showing anybody. He isn't letting anybody know that he's a designated player. He's been, I'm to the point now, he's just an absolute bust. I don't think I think he might be on the outs. I don't know if he's going to, what the deal is there. And I don't know if he can turn it around. Maybe you know more, but an ankle injury and then discipline, that's a guy that doesn't want to be here and is looking to get out of here as fast as possible.
I think it's very easy to look at that and say that's exactly what it was. Now, we had Kurt Schmid on with DJ and PK last Friday, and they asked him the question straight up. It's like, what's going on with Diogo? And Kurt said that he legit, it was a heel injury, I guess is what it was. And he was out, he said, for a week to 10 days. But when he returned to training, the effort level was not there. And Pablo, there's one thing that he's a stickler for, it's effort. He requires it in training sessions. He wants to see guys who are engaged. And Diogo didn't give that effort. And Pablo said, you know what? I'm putting my foot down and we're going to make an example right now. He's not traveling on this 2-game road trip. They kept him home. And who knows how long he may be in the doghouse for. I don't know. And yeah, he very well could find himself on the way out when it comes to the transfer market. I don't know that side of it, but it's not a good look for your highest priced player, your lone DP on the roster, who, yeah, you're right. He's not delivered to the level that RSL expected when he arrived here. And they've got to get more out of him. And you want to talk about a guy who needs to buy back in if he's going to stick around? It's Diogo. But yeah, he very well at this point, Brandt, could find himself on the way out. I have no idea on that, but the transfer window's open and he could find himself being shipped somewhere else.
Yeah, he's played 24 games, I think, somewhere in that range, and he has 3 goals and 3 assists.
Yeah,
That's
need more from a DP. There's no doubt.
unless he's your keeper, and they don't score goals, but but,
But
definitely.
offensive minded DPs, which are exactly what these slots are built for, because they're generate offense. He has not generated the level of offense that his contract typically requires.
And the funny thing about it is, if you watch him, he is talented. It's there, but we've talked to other folks, and it's like he just kind of is what he is. He's not a finisher. He looks good out there. He just isn't gonna finish, and he doesn't look like he's happy to be here, which is half of the battle anyway. I mean, Utah's a weird place for players. That it's probably a culture shock for a lot of people.
It is, but at the same time, the level that he's been playing at is beneath what RSL expects and should expect from a DP level player.
And then finally, Pablo Mastroeni, last year of a contract. They haven't renewed. They talked about it in the preseason that it was brought up and they had discussions, but nothing came about. And I think is it a waiting game to see how RSL does? And because it was mentioned the last 4 seasons they faded into the sunset and out of the playoffs rather quickly. And if that happened again this year, I can't imagine that Pablo would be renewed. But we're getting to the point where, with this kind of season, I mean, what are they going to do with Pablo?
Great question. Because quite honestly, I'm surprised that he got into a final year of his deal with no extension or whatever. And who knows what it may be a prove it situation, as you mentioned, Brandt. It may be prove it to us that you're capable of keeping this squad engaged. And quite honestly, with the struggles RSL's had this year, he very well may have to prove that more so than ever, because he's got to keep these guys on the same page, because there's still a whole half of the domestic season to go. There is that Champions Cup, not
Leagues Cup.
Leagues Cup, excuse me, coming up. That'll obviously be another competition to be a part of. And he's got to keep his guys engaged. So in many respects, yeah, it feels like more like it's a prove you're worth it to us. Now, what does he have to do to prove that? No idea. They make the playoffs. I think that would go a long way to showing that, hey, he kept his guys engaged despite a pretty rough start. But man, at this point, halfway through the season, it seems like it's a tough thing to consider that it's going to be easy to do that. But if he pulls that off, I'd be surprised if they don't re-up him. Let's just put it that way.
And is there any heat, do you think, on the front office with the misses? They've had quite a few misses. The only thing saving them is probably the Cabral and Diogo and Xavier playing better. But the front office doesn't have a lot to, shout about this season so far.
Well, here's the thing. Pro sports, it's all what have you done for me lately? And it's a results-oriented business. When things aren't going good, everybody feels the heat. I'm talking coaching staff, I'm talking front office. They understand it's their job to get the right players in place. And those players, ultimately, their success on the field reflects on those who are working behind the scenes, whether it's the coaching staff, technical staff, front office, whatever it is. I believe there's some heat out there. And now the Millers, obviously, like I said, are coming in here and they're kind of learning what they don't know about this. So there may be, I guess, ever so slightly a longer leash than, let's say, had it been the continuation of the Blitzer and Ryan Smith group running things. There may have been a shorter leash there, but there's always heat. There's no doubt about that. Results are what matter. And so far, the results are lacking for RSL.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the good results are lacking. They've had plenty of negative results. So, you got any final questions, Brennan? I know I tend to talk too much.
No, I mean, if you could just say hi to DJ and PK, that'd be great. Tell them I said hi. What's up? But yeah, other than that, fantastic. I mean, your cadence is amazing. I love your takes on things. You definitely have your job because you're good at it. So keep doing that, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, it's a dream come true. And like I said, I've RSL means a lot to me because I'm a hometown kid. Like I like to put on for this state, and I'd like to see them in a better spot right now. 10 losses doesn't sit well with anybody. So The hope is the back half of the season is much better than the first half, but it feels like there needs to be some investment, and that means getting players here, especially of an attacking variety. That's the one thing, is we need to see more offense.
Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time. It's been wonderful to talk to you. We appreciate your perspective and your insider knowledge on the club, and look forward to having you on again soon sometime.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. By the way, I probably should have revealed this right out the top. You guys are the first ever RSL podcast I've ever been on. So thank you for the invite. First off, it was cool to do this and talk about a club, like I said, that means a lot to me, and kind of talk about I think a part of our community that, yeah, it's a very niche like group, obviously, because the soccer community, it's very insular, and that's not a bad thing. It's how the soccer community operates, but it's a really cool part of our community that needs to be highlighted more.
Well, thanks for that. We enjoy having people like you on because we want to. I'm really curious to find out why people love soccer. And it's great to see, you Tottenham Hotspur and then Borussia Dortmund. I'm kind of a Mainz 05 fan.
Okay.
So, but it's been great to chat with you, and we look forward to continuing, talk about all the converts to soccer.
Anytime you need me, reach out. All right.
We will. Thank you.